Hello everybody, my name is Regan, but if we're using our made up names, it's Sato, and welcome back to Press Play Studios, where today we're going to be covering the new hero nerfs, mostly nerfs, couple of buffs, and one really weird change to Mcree about what the patch is coming out for January 24th in Australia and 23rd for most of the world. These are some really interesting hero updates that we were not expecting to get, so I reckon we just go into it and start discussing some of these things. The first one we're going to talk about is Hanzo's Storm Arrows. The damage has been reduced from 70 to 60. What this does is it really changes Hanzo's close-up kill potential, especially against bigger targets like Winston and D.Va, meaning that it's going to be more easy to dive on a Hanzo. It also changes him when it comes to bursting down squishier targets, but not by a whole lot. The 10 damage is not going to change as much against squishier targets. However, it's really going to be more of a buff for D.Va and Winston instead of a nerf to Hanzo. Mcree has had some really weird things happen to him. So, the first one, and probably the weirdest one, is his base health has been increased by 50 points. This is going to make Mcree a lot better solo duelist in close quarters combat. It's going to be harder to burst him down. I'm split on this decision. I feel like you can give Mcree more health, but is it really the right move for what you want to do with the character? I feel like Mcree was sort of suited in that mid-range sort of DPS role, where he can deal damage from a distance, but he's also not bad close up. He can do different things like that. However, this makes it a lot more like they want to have him close up, and that's the playstyle of Mcree that they want. I'm not sure if that's really the right way to go about with Mcree. His Peacekeeper, or his Primary Fire, its recovery time has been increased from 0.42 to 0.5 seconds. This is just a change I don't think will be as big as some people think it may be with his distance. However, those 0.08 seconds could matter when it comes to taking out certain heroes like a Pharah, or maybe if you're taking on a Widow for some reason. I don't understand why you do that as a Mcree. However, you won't be able to easily burst people down from a distance, which once again sort of promotes a closer playstyle with a flashbang and the Fan the Hammer combo. Also, another change has come to his ult. Firing Deadeye no longer locks the player's aim, meaning that as Mcree, you can now pan your camera, and as long as they're in the camera's view, you can still get them. You don't actually have to be looking at them when you use the ult. You can sort of lock onto a target as well as turning around to lock onto more targets. It means that Deadeye is going to become a lot more of an offensive ult and a lot more deadly of an ult if not used correctly, which isn't bad, because if you don't treat a Deadeye well, then it should be quite a devastating ult, which it kind of hasn't been because of how hard it is to set up right. A change that I am really happy with is to Reaper. His passive life stealing, the healing amount he gets from that has been reduced from 40% to 30%. And as a Reinhardt main, I can tell you that this change is making me over the moon, because especially in lower tiers where I play, it's been a nightmare to try and deal with Reapers who can just sort of have no regard for personal safety and throw themselves into the tank line because of how much healing they were getting. It's super hard for a tank to take out Reaper. Now I feel like it's going to be a lot more manageable, that if you are the better player, the tank can take out the Reaper. Even though the Reaper is still a tank busting hero, the tanks actually have a chance now with the life still being taken down. Orisa has been nerfed as well in this patch. Her Primary Fire's damage has been reduced from 11 damage per second to 9 damage per second. Not really much to comment on this change. It's exactly like it sounds. It's not a huge damage shift, however, it is going to affect how much Orisa is able to solo kill and how much Orisa is able to burst down certain heroes. Her Fortify cooldown has been increased from 8 to 10 seconds, meaning that crowd control can more easily deal with her, and the damage reduction that it gives that was nerfed in the latest patch isn't as readily available as it was beforehand. Just on that Fortify cooldown change, it also means because the shield hasn't got any nerfs or buffs in this patch, and it's still at the 600 HP with the lengthy cooldown, it means that Orisa is going to have a lot more trouble when it comes to staying alive during team fights. There's a lot of damage being thrown around, which I think could actually finally kill off Orisa as the main tank of choice in this current meta that she's been for a couple of months. The last change to Orisa is the halt. The snare duration has been reduced from 1 to 0.65 seconds. This change means it's going to be harder to combo things like Meteor Strike with the Halt, and I don't think that's a huge change. It's just going to make Orisa's ability to help out a team with some devastating combos a lot harder, although it is still certainly possible. Sigma has been given some pretty big nerfs, and I'm not going to comment on whether they're justified or not, but I reckon he's probably the most nerfed character from this patch. His primary fire's range has been reduced by 2 meters from 22 down to 20. This is going to be a big change on certain maps to where those 22 meters are actually a difference compared to 20 meters. Close quarters maps won't make the change as much, so this isn't a change that's going to affect Sigma overall. However, it probably will affect his play rate on certain maps like Kings Row that have sort of open spaces, and Junkertown maps that have wide open spaces like the mid down Kings Row and trying to take it to the first checkpoint in Junkertown both have wide spaces. That's where you'll see this patch sort of coming in handy when it comes to dealing with a Sigma. Probably the biggest change in this entire patch is to the gravitic flux. It can now be interrupted before the targets begin falling. What this means is that when Sigma lifts up people from the ground using the ult, and they are in the ground, but they have in the air, sorry, not in the ground, when they're in the air and they have not started falling, when they're still in that sort of animation up in the air, you can now interrupt it with stuns and killing the Sigma, and it will not deal the damage to the characters. That will just fall to the earth. And this is really important because it means that Sigma's ult cannot really be used as an escape option if you want to use it like that in a team fight to sort of turn the tide, because it can now be interrupted by his death and by stuns. And it also means that he has to be a lot more careful when using it about where where the Sigma itself is placed before using the ult, so he doesn't get stunned out of it. Because, of course, he can fly with it, so you want to make sure that you're not going to get hit by a Doomfist or a Mcree Flashbang or a Brig Shield Bash before you've actually used the ult. Also, you cannot interrupt it while the characters are falling. It has to be in that intermission period while they're still in the air. As soon as they start falling, no matter what you do, the damage will go through. And the impact slow duration has been reduced from 0.9 to 0.6 seconds on the Sigma. What this means is that you will not be able to easily follow up on the Sigma's ult once the characters have hit the ground. They will be more easily able to escape from the slow duration, which could usually be used to snowball fights and stuff because of the 0.9 seconds that was used before, where the characters couldn't really do too much after they hit the ground. Now they'll be able to more easily escape. And the last change to Sigma is the explosion damage from his accretion has been reduced from 60 to 40. This means that Sigma can no longer combo against 200 HP heroes with an accretion hypersphere to a combo. That will still leave them with 10 health, meaning they're quite easy to finish off with a melee if you're close enough. However, it also just gives characters with high mobility, like Genji for example, a chance to escape from that sort of combo, and that does mean that accretion is less likely to be used offensively in a way of dealing damage, and is more likely to be used for the stun rather than the damage. The last character who has been nerfed in this patch is Baptiste. Both of them have been to his firing, his primary fire and his secondary fire. His primary fire's recovery time has been increased from 0.36 to 0.45, similar change to what happened to Mcree, except this time Baptiste will not be, the change is not making Baptiste a more close range sort of hero. It's instead because Baptiste will no longer be able to burst down other heroes as well. If the Baptiste has good enough aim, this change won't affect too much. However, Baptiste burst kills are going to be becoming less and less of a thing. And lastly, his secondary fire, his healing, has been reduced from 60 to 50. This is a big change because his healing will not be as potent. We saw it happen with Moira a few patches ago, where her healing went down and her pick rate went quite far down as well. I feel like a similar thing is going to happen with Baptiste. Once the healing has gone down and the damage potential seems to have gone down thanks to recovery time, Baptiste is going to become a more mid-tier healer rather than the dominant force that he's been for the last couple months, as well as having the nerfs to his immortality field that came in the last patch. They have really been trying to get Baptiste down to a level where he is just amongst the supports rather than being the dominant support. So those are all the changes that have come today. Mostly nerfs to double shield characters or characters who have benefited from double shield. However, there's also that Mcree buff. Let me know what you think of the Mcree changes actually, because I find them quite weird and strange, but I don't know, I'm not really a Mcree player. I don't play a lot of Mcree, so just let me know if those are actually good changes for him, or if they are indeed how I think they are, kind of changing the character in a way that isn't actually the way he should be changed. Thank you everyone so much for watching. That's a wrap.